Welkom bij de Nieuwe Wereld. Mijn naam is Marlies Dekkers en mijn gast vandaag is Georgia Ede. Georgia, welcome.
Thank you, Marlies. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so proud that you are here. You are here for a food health congress.
Yes, there's a conference tomorrow, a very special conference. There'll be, I think, more than 600 people are coming to the nutrition conference tomorrow. So I'm really excited to be here. It's my first time in the Netherlands.
Ooh, but you are very famous.
Oh, really?
Yes, you are. And you are a psychiatrist, and you make the combination from the brain and food.
Yes, yes.
So we go to talk 45 minutes about that.
I'm ready.
Because I don't think it's a logical combination that you think what has food with if you are have dementia, right, or a panic attack, or what kind of diseases you have, brain diseases. There are a lot. Then you think you have to go a lot of talking and pills. I think that is the cure we have.
That's right. So for the entire history of psychiatry, we've been using talk therapy, and we think about the causes of mental illness. We think, well, maybe it's stress, or maybe it's trauma from some serious thing that happened to you.
Mom and dad.
Parents, mother's always to blame. And then in the 1950s, so about 75 years ago, this is when the psychiatric medications came into being. And since then, for the past 75 years, we think a lot about the chemicals in the brain, dopamine and serotonin, and that there must be some chemical imbalance, because these medicines they helped a lot. They did make a big difference for the first time. They actually could help some people with serious mental illness. Still not enough people, but they made a big difference. So most people who were thinking about brain biology instead of psychotherapy, they were thinking about these little chemicals in the brain. And but that has sort of stayed the same for 75 years. No improvements. And most people do not respond to medications very well. They have side effects, or the medication doesn't work, or it only
temporarily
works a little. Exactly, it stops working, or it only works a little bit. So, and some people don't want to take medicine. Some people can't afford to take medicine. So now we have some brand new theories about what causes things like depression and anxiety and even Alzheimer's disease. Is we're thinking about the same problems that are causing the rest of our body to fall apart, which is, many things, but I think mostly the way our diet has changed over the past 75 years.
Because we have more brain diseases than before?
Yeah, so our physical health has been deteriorating for the past at least 50 to 75 years. And things like diabetes and obesity and heart disease doubled or tripled around the world in just the recent decades. But our mental health has also been deteriorating for that same period of time. So we now have, at least in the United States, we have 1 in 6 people taking psychiatric medication, and we are expecting to see Alzheimer's dementia triple by 2050. And the rates of depression, anxiety, and serious mental illness on college campuses is 3 to 4 times what it was even just 20, 30 years ago. So something is wrong.
Something is really wrong.
Yeah.
And because just what you are Harvard trained, so perhaps a little introduction, where you coming from, so that people know what is your background.
Sure. So I, after I finished college, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I worked for 7 years in research laboratories as a technician, including in Germany and in Boston. And then I decided to go to medical school, and when I finished medical school, I decided to study psychiatry. But that decision was difficult because I loved science, and so about half of me wanted to be a pathologist, to look under the microscope and make these very clear, simple diagnoses, very black and white. But the other half of me really loved people and loved thinking about the mind and loved thinking about this. Mental health is such a puzzle. We don't understand it. I would like to understand it better. So I decided to go into psychiatry, and I practiced traditional psychiatry for about 10 years, so medications and psychotherapy, and that was really, I loved my work, but most of my patients were not getting that much better. So after about 10 years, I noticed my own health was changing, and I didn't know what was wrong, and I went to all these special Harvard doctors who were very...
You know everybody.
I know everybody.
You were
I was working
in the
there.
front row.
I was working there, so I had access to really good specialists and all kinds of special testing. Everybody said, there's nothing wrong. So, I was having stomach pain and physical pain, fibromyalgia and irritable bowel syndrome and migraine headaches and fatigue, all these things that I never had before.
But a lot of people have.
That most of my patients have at least one of these things, and I never knew how to help them. I never knew how to help them. So,
but doctors also not. So
no,
we are all in the blind.
No, exactly. Nobody knew how to help those people. And so I thought, well, maybe since nobody can help me, I'm going to have to try to do something for myself. So since one of the problems was some stomach pain after I was eating, I thought, well, maybe I changed my diet, maybe that will help. So I just started experimenting with my diet for about 6 months, write everything down. And then after about 6 months, everything was better. But the diet that I ended up with was really upside down from what I was taught was a healthy diet. So it was, low in plants and low in fiber, high in fat, high cholesterol, high in animal foods. And that was the diet that fixed all of these problems. And I was really shocked.
And which year are we talking about?
Let's see, that would have been maybe 2009.
Okay,
yeah,
so then it
was a long
really,
time ago.
Really new, because now you hear more and more about it, but then it was really a shock.
It was a big, big surprise for me. I had no idea. And I honestly thought that the diet was going to kill me.
Yeah, because that's what
Right?
they tell us. If you eat a lot of meat or high in cholesterol, then not good for your heart.
Yes, exactly. So I thought, well, I feel wonderful, but is this diet going to kill me? So I also wondered, it was strange. I think what really surprised me as a psychiatrist was I didn't change my diet to try to help my brain. Most of my problems were, below the neck. Metabolic, right? So, but my brain was better. I mean, my mood was better, my concentration was better, my sleep was better, I was calmer, focused. I thought, this diet seems to be good for the brain. Why? Why is that? And could this diet help my patients? But I didn't want to just recommend this because I didn't know anything about nutrition at that time. So I decided to study nutrition. And as you probably know, as soon as you start to study it, really study it and look at the actual science, you realize how most of what we are told about nutrition is wrong.
It's such a shocker that it's so strange.
It really is.
Where did we take the wrong exit?
Yeah, and so I was so surprised to find that there was no evidence, about you have to eat lots of plants and lots of fruits and vegetables, or you have to have fiber, or you have to have whole grains, and meat is bad for you. There's no evidence meat is bad for you. There's no evidence that saturated fat is bad for you or cholesterol is bad for you. And so, in fact, almost the opposite. So everything was upside down.
Yeah, but if we just take that one thing, if you see the how do you say that in English? WHO? Yeah.
Yes,
They also learn us from don't eat meat, especially red meat, but don't eat meat. So in what kind of evidence-based are they tell us that?
Yeah, so I think most people around the world are familiar with that report that was published by the World Health Organization, and that was proclaiming that red meat probably caused cancer.
Cancer, yeah.
And processed meat definitely caused cancer, but red meat probably caused cancer. And a lot of people, they're afraid to eat meat now because of this report. But the report, the science behind the report, was extremely thin. There were lots and lots and lots of these questionnaire studies, these what are called nutrition epidemiology studies, which are not scientific. They're just guesses based on questionnaires. And we could have a long conversation about that, but most, the hundreds and hundreds of studies they looked at, almost all of them were these nutrition epidemiology studies, which are questionnaires and guesses. They're theories, they're untested theories. And then there were just 6 experimental studies, 6 actual experiments where they changed the diet to see what happened. And only 3 of them were in human beings.
The other in rats.
In rats, yes. Rats that were injected with cancer-causing chemicals before the experiment started, which I know. And then the human experiments were very small and very strangely designed, and they didn't just change the meat, they changed lots of other different things. So there's really, and none of the people developed cancer, and none of the animals developed cancer in these 6.
Although they give a stuff to produce cancer.
Exactly. Even if you give the rat cancer-causing chemical and then you give it red meat, it still does not develop cancer.
It cures it. But it's so confusing. You go really in the depth and you study it and you try it by yourself.
Yeah.
But give it some light on this subject. What guidance can we use then?
Yeah, so the wonderful thing about science, about nutrition, is that there is science there, if you know where to look for it. So if you set most of the headlines that we hear in the media and most of the official nutrition guidelines for most countries, most of them are based almost entirely on these nutrition epidemiology studies, which are not scientific. They're just guesses, and usually they're wrong. But there is real science out there if you know where to look. And so, we have information from anthropology, from biochemistry, from neuroscience, from gastroenterology, from botany, even from plant science and animal studies, studies of how animals process food. We have so much information that we usually don't look at because we're so busy looking at all of this guesswork, this official that nutrition officials use to make their decisions. We really need to be looking at the actual science, how the body works, what are the molecules that are inside food, and how do they affect the brain and the rest of the body.
And the mitochondria, I think, is very important, huh?
Yes, the mitochondria. So, almost every cell in the body has mitochondria. They're almost like tiny little bacteria almost. They're very ancient little organisms, and they live inside our cells, and they do lots of things. But one of the most important things they do is they produce energy. And the brain needs a tremendous amount of energy, 10 times more than you would expect for an organ of its size.
And why is that? Because of the electricity here, or why we need so much?
Yes, Marlies, that's exactly right. The electricity. So the brain is an electrical organ, and it takes a lot of energy to generate that electrical power.
Is that, perhaps we go too deep now, but I'm so curious, is that, do we already understand what memory is? Or is that too deep?
Well, we can try. So there's a part of the brain in the middle. It's called the hippocampus, and it's shaped like a seahorse. And this part of the brain is one of very few places in the brain where you can grow brand new cells. And one of the things we know about memory is that if I'm learning to do something new, or trying to memorize something for a test or for an interview, then the brain needs to create new pathways to make like a new circuit, almost like a new electrical circuit, a new pathway to store that information. And to do that, you need to grow new cells and connect them in a new pattern. And that requires insulin. And more insulin than the rest of the brain.
Now we come on the key, insulin.
Yes. So it requires glucose from blood sugar, but it also requires insulin. And so if you have anything wrong with your brain's ability to have glucose or insulin, anything wrong with glucose or insulin in the brain, your memory will be affected, because then you can't generate that extra energy that the hippocampus needs to create new pathways.
That's clear.
Okay, good.
That's clear. And why we call it electricity is.
Yeah, so the way the cells in the brain that create the reason you need the electricity is because the cells inside the brain, it's like a very complicated computer network, and they have to communicate very fast. And the fastest means of communication in the body is electricity. So the cells need to have this, they need to be able to fire an electrical signal. So one cell says, okay, I have a message I want to send. The electricity sends that message, and the electrical signal is transformed, converted into a chemical signal. It's transformed into, the electricity comes and it causes the cell to release neurotransmitters, chemical messaging molecules like serotonin, probably a lot of people have heard of, dopamine, GABA, these special chemicals, and they are like the language of the cells. So those neurotransmitters get released there with electricity is what sends those, what triggers those chemicals to be released from the cells. So you have electricity turning into chemical energy, and then the chemical goes to the next cell and says, this is my message. And then that next cell turns that chemical back into electricity, and it's like a...
wow, it's such a beauty, isn't it?
It's just so sophisticated and so complicated.
Wow. But that is what we think we are.
We are.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the brain, we have a brain, but the brain doesn't, we still don't fully understand how the brain works, because it is so complicated and so sophisticated. And it's locked away in this chamber of bone. We can't see it. We can't feel it working. It has no nerve endings. We can't touch it. The rest of our organs we have a much better sense of, but the brain is a mystery still.
But it's also so beautiful.
So amazing, yeah.
So I totally can understand you go in this field. But then back to what you said, so it needs a lot of fuel.
Yes, yes. And it can use the two main fuels. A lot of people think of glucose, which is blood sugar. A lot of people think of glucose as the brain's favorite energy source, and that in a perfect world, your brain would be running 100% on glucose all the time.
So just, perhaps not
please.
Everybody knows what glucose is, but that is if you eat bread, pasta, cookies, that is glucose?
Yes. So glucose can come from two places. It can come from outside the body, from food, so from carbohydrates, sugars and starches. It can come from carrots or potatoes, or from cookies, or from cereal, candy. It can come from sugars and starches, but it can also come from inside the body. So the brain needs some glucose. This is sugar, tiny little simple sugar molecules that are floating in the bloodstream. The brain needs some glucose all the time, small amount, but it doesn't have to come from outside the body, because we can make our own. So the liver can turn fat and protein into glucose all day, all night long.
And is that quality better if we produce it by ourselves than we eat it?
It can be. So it depends on your metabolism, like how healthy you are, and it also depends on which types of foods you're eating. So if you generate it from inside, it's usually better because it's smoother, it doesn't have all these big peaks and valleys, it's very reliable. You don't get these sharp spikes and crashes in depending on what you're eating and your
A
if you have
croissant.
an unhealthy, if you're having a croissant, right, a nice chocolate croissant. So if you're having this, it's going to give you a much sharper rise in glucose and a much sharper rise in insulin, and then a steeper drop. And every time the glucose in your blood sugar, every time your blood sugar is spiking and crashing, the brain sugar is also doing this.
That is, I think, the dip, what a lot of people know after eating.
Yeah.
Then you get, after 1 hour, you...
Exactly. So it's very unstable. So the brain becomes unstable, and also those spikes in glucose and insulin, well, two things. The glucose itself, when you get a brain glucose spike, that's very dangerous because the brain doesn't like to have very much glucose inside. The brain is always keeping the brain glucose level is 80% lower. It's supposed to be 80% lower than your blood sugar. It always has some, but it's very low. So if you have too much glucose in the brain, it sticks to the molecules inside your brain and all the important parts of your cells, to the genes, to the DNA, to the proteins, to the fats, to all of the mitochondrial membranes. It sticks and causes them to clump into little clusters that don't work properly. And these can build up in the brain. So,
and what kind of disease you have then? Is that fatigue, or is that then dementia, or?
It can lead to, these little clumps are called advanced glycation end products, but we shorten this, we call it AGE, which age. These are, we think, responsible for early aging of the brain and the body too. So when your molecules get sticky, also. Yes. So these cause inflammation and oxidative stress in the brain. So an inflammation and oxidative stress are very damaging to the brain, and they can damage the memory circuits, but also they can actually kill the cells inside the hippocampus and cause it to shrink. And they cause lots of other damage as well. So the AGEs trigger this inflammation and oxidative stress, and the inflammation and oxidative stress damage the brain.
You don't want that.
You don't want that. And most people are still, eating this way with too much sugar, refined carbohydrates, especially like sugar and flour and fruit juice and cereals, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. So they're getting these glucose spikes in the brain and this inflammation spike and this oxidative stress, these free radicals, multiple times per day. Never enough time to heal.
So we eat our brain in a damage.
Yeah, we do.
I don't know if this sentence is good English, but
yes,
because we eat wrong, the brain is going to damage.
Yes, and and the rest of the body too. So it's very, we're not designed to eat this way.
Yeah, Mark Hyman is always saying, he said it's one course and a lot of diseases.
Exactly.
That is
exactly. It's like a trunk of a tree, all the branches of the tree. So the problems with glucose and insulin and metabolic problems are like the trunk of the tree, and then you have all these branches: dementia and heart disease and diabetes and obesity and liver disease and many, many others.
And it all started with the wrong food.
Yeah.
And a lot of us included, I also thought, fresh orange juice. You start your day with a croissant and a fresh orange juice.
Yeah.
And you think you are doing well for your health.
I know, and it's delicious, it's hard. So it's hard for some people to stop eating these things, and a lot of people don't realize how dangerous they are. So, but it is really, really. That's why I'm so glad you invited me, because it's really important to understand the connection, and that when you're eating this way, you are causing brain damage. And if you do this for too many years, it can be very difficult to reverse and heal that brain damage.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you hear more and more for other diseases, but that it's also brain diseases. That is, I think, pretty new. But what I think everybody wants to know now: what do we have to eat then? Because when you try it out by yourself, and you said this is the totally opposite.
Yeah.
So what is the totally opposite then?
Yeah, so for some people, if you're still lucky and you still have a healthy metabolism, which is not very many people anymore.
80% not?
Yes, at least in the United States, there was one study that showed that 88% of people have some damage to their metabolism, some degree or other. And the figure in the Netherlands, the best data I could find about Holland, was 44% of people in Holland, and perhaps more, have damage to, this is called insulin resistance, or sometimes people call it pre-diabetes. It's your insulin levels are too high because you're eating in a way that demands too much insulin. And so if you already have some damage, it's very likely that you are probably going to need to, because you can't process carbohydrates properly anymore, you're probably going to need to reduce the amount of carbohydrate and also pay attention to the type of carbohydrate that you eat. And for a lot of us, we need to eat a very low carbohydrate diet to get our glucose and insulin levels back to normal. But if you still have a healthy metabolism, let's say you're young or very physically active young person, maybe you still have a good metabolism, then maybe all you have to do is remove all the processed foods, all the processed carbohydrates, the sugar and the flour and the fruit juice and the candy and the cookies and the cereals.
But that is for the healthy.
Exactly.
So I think that most people who listen, I think, okay, let me start with that. But you said that is just stage one.
Yes, exactly. So everybody needs to remove those things. Nobody should be eating those things. All the refined carbohydrates, the processed carbohydrates. Nobody needs those. Everyone should stop. But then, unfortunately, most of us need to go further. I think what you're going to tell will shock us. So what do we not have to eat? What is then stage 2? So stage 2 is, and you can figure out if you need to do this, you can use a glucose monitor to see if your blood sugar is in a normal range. You can get an insulin test to see if your insulin is too high. You can measure your waist circumference to see, is your waist circumference more than half of your height? Mm-hmm. These are clues to this insulin problem. So if you clean up your diet and you still have these problems, or you still have symptoms, memory problems, depression, anxiety, mood swings, concentration problems, if you're still having problems, then I think the next step, what I would recommend for most people, is to take most or all of the carbohydrate out of the diet. And so this means taking out, even most of the fruits and most of the starchy vegetables, and, really concentrating most of your diet on animal foods. And this, of course, sounds really strange, but...
You know what's happening in the Netherlands with our farmers?
No, tell me.
Our governments throw all the farmers out of our country, so they have to quit with the meat here. Yeah, it's very strange. But yeah. But so it's so strange because it kind of the environment for a healthy environment, but the new science, like what you study, we need meat. So what kind of diseases, how much diseases will we get if people eat less and less and less meat? There are two problems with that. So one is that what are you going to eat instead of the meat? So because if you replace the meat with whole foods, so if you like whole plant foods, let's say fruits and vegetables and whole grains and things like that, if you do that, you're not going to have all your nutrients, because there are many nutrients you can only obtain from meat. And by meat, I mean not just red meat, but also seafood and poultry and eggs. So these animal foods. So the animal foods have meat and seafood and poultry. If you construct your diet properly, they will provide every nutrient you need in its proper form and without any substances that interfere, any anti-nutrients that interfere with your ability to absorb and utilize those nutrients.
This is different from plant food. So if you're eating a mostly plant diet or an all plant diet, you'll be missing many nutrients, and you'll be also exposing your body to a lot of defensive molecules that the plant uses to protect itself, and you'll be exposing yourself to anti-nutrients, which the plant uses to hold on to its nutrients for itself. So it's just much more difficult. It's harder on the body because you are taking in these kind of aggressive molecules, which are designed to try to harm us, and also they're stealing some of the nutrients out of the food that you eat. So it's much easier to nourish your brain and protect your brain if you are eating animal foods and either only being very careful with certain plant foods that are safer, and I call them kinder, gentler plant foods.
And which one are kinder ones?
Yeah, so really the grains and the legumes are the most dangerous. All of the seeds, the grains and beans and nuts and seeds, they're all seeds, and the seeds contain the embryo, the baby plant inside. They're very heavily protected. They have lots and lots of defensive molecules, and they hold on tightly to their nutrients, of course, for the future generation.
So they don't give it to us.
Exactly. They don't want us to have, they don't want us to benefit, which I understand, I respect.
Yeah, but I also think the meaning is that we poop it out and then the plants can grow. So that was the idea, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the grains and the legumes are the most dangerous, and the nuts and the seeds also to a certain extent. So those are the ones I think to be most careful about, especially if you have any gut health issues, digestive problems, unexplained health problems, and you're not really sure, what's happening. Those are the ones I think to avoid first. And then there are certain plant foods, certain fruits and vegetables even to avoid, especially if you're thinking about the brain. There are some plant foods which naturally produce neurotoxins, chemicals that damage our nervous system.
And really damage?
Yes. I interfere with with our nervous system's ability to function. So, for example, one very popular, some people even think of it as a superfood now, is flax seeds.
Yeah.
Do you eat flax seeds in the Netherlands?
They push it, yeah, because that is a superfood, that is healthy.
Yes, and so what do flax seeds contain? Cyanide. Quite a bit of cyanide. It does not take very many flax seeds to create a cyanide toxicity. Cyanide poisons your mitochondria. It goes inside the mitochondria, these energy generators, goes right inside, right into the middle, and stops it from working properly. It's like a targeted weapon. You do not want to eat a food that is trying to poison your mitochondria.
No.
So flax seeds are very dangerous, and cassava is, I don't know how to say, if you have this in the Netherlands also, but in the United States, it's a root. You make, for example, you can make tapioca pudding out of it. It's a starchy root. Mm-hmm. And it's becoming very popular, at least in the United States and certain other countries, as a gluten-free starch for chips and things, cookies and chips and flour. You can buy cassava flour. Also produces cyanide. So this is another food to be careful with. I would suggest not eating those foods at all, flax seeds and cassava. Nightshades is a family of fruits and vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, aubergine, and the skin of white potatoes, and goji berries are also a nightshade. So did I forget one? Potatoes, peppers, eggplant. Yeah. So those foods contain neurotoxins. They work exactly like nerve gas does to poison the ability of the nerve cells to work properly. So some people are more sensitive to these than others, and it really depends partly on how much you're eating, and are you eating them raw or cooked, and how is your gut health. But there is a certain percentage of these neurotoxins that do cross into the bloodstream and can affect the nervous system. So I recommend that people with mental health problems avoid the nightshades as well. So some plants are worse than others.
As fruit?
Yeah, and so nightshade fruits So for example, anything with a seed is a fruit. So tomatoes are technically a fruit and peppers are technically fruits. So there are some nightshade fruits. But then fruits in general, if you have trouble processing carbohydrate now, if you have any metabolic damage, fruit is usually not going to be your friend. You're probably going to be able to have a small amount of it because it is so high in sugar. And if it's too high in sugar, it will cause these glucose spikes and these insulin spikes, and that can create more problems for the brain and kind of destabilize your brain chemistry.
Yeah, it's the insulin. But also citrus, also like grapefruit or
sure, all of those. Yep. So all the fruits have sugar.
But okay, I think we as women, a lot of us are also a mom. And we told our children, you have to eat your fruits and legumes, otherwise you become not healthy.
Right. So if the child has a healthy metabolism, then fruits are fine, but you want to make sure that they're also getting animal foods. And you don't want them to have so much fruit that they don't have, that they're not getting their other nutrients. They're not very nutritious. They don't really have that many vitamins and minerals in them.
Yeah, but that's what everybody said.
I know.
You have to take your vitamins.
We think of them as nutritious, but animal foods are far more nutritious. The fruits and vegetables just contain a small number. And some of them don't contain very many nutrients at all. But even the most nutritious ones, they just have a handful of the nutrients that we need, a small percentage. If you're looking for all your full supply of nutrients, you really have to go to the animal foods. So children can have fruit, but they also really, children especially, pregnant women, babies, children, those are the people in the world who most need the animal foods because those are the people who are growing. And when you're in that phase, you need every molecule, every nutrient is especially important when you're building a new human being or when you're trying to grow, and your brain is still developing until your early 20s. So young people really need more nutrients than old people like me.
and how people who are vegetarian or vegan?
Yeah, so that's a good question because a vegetarian diet, if you're eating enough eggs, because eggs are very nutritious, it's hard to get iron from eggs. But if you're cooking eggs, you'll get all the other nutrients you need. But it's very, very nutritious, the egg. So if you're a vegetarian and you're eating enough eggs, then you're fine.
But how much eggs a day I have to think about?
So each egg contains 6 grams of protein. Yeah. And so let's say
if you cook it.
If you cook it, exactly. Because the raw egg, you're so smart. The raw egg, it's very difficult to, you have much less protein available to you in the raw egg because the egg white, that's where most of the protein is, contains anti-nutrients that make it difficult for us to access all of the protein. So if you cook the egg, you can get almost all the protein and the vitamins and the minerals, but you still have trouble with iron though. There's very little iron in eggs. But so you get 6 grams of protein in a cooked egg, approximately. So you'll need at least 10 eggs per day, probably closer to 12 or 15, depending on who you are.
When I said 6, it was not enough.
Exactly.
just to get an idea how much, because if friends see me eating, they said, are you crazy when I hop, 10 eggs?
Yeah, I mean, if you're you might be getting some protein from nuts or seeds or tofu or something else, but if you're trying to get all your protein from eggs, then you need quite a few eggs.
Yeah, but you just learned us that we have to skip all the other things. So can you guide us just a normal day? And that you said if you want to eat clean and healthy, how do we eat?
So you really want this core of your diet should be animal foods. And so meat, seafood, poultry, eggs, and it doesn't
but also yogurt or
so cheese? I have a different opinion about dairy than most people, which is unless you don't have dairy is complicated So dairy...
You can have an allergy for it.
You can have an allergy, you can have a sensitivity, lactose. But also dairy is designed for young growing mammals, for just baby mammals, trying to grow them into a larger baby mammal. So it has special proteins, it has special fats, it has special carbohydrates designed for growth. And it will turn on our growth systems too, and it will raise our insulin levels. So this is why bodybuilders like things like whey protein as a supplement, whey powder, because it turns on insulin. It doesn't raise blood sugar levels, it raises blood insulin levels. And that's not necessarily what you want unless you are a baby mammal trying to grow very, very fast. So there are some problems with dairy, and also dairies, because it's cow dairy, it's not human dairy. Because it's from a cow, it's we don't digest it properly. We don't have the enzymes that we need to digest it down into its individual amino acids, which is what we need to use it. So it can cause digestive problems, can cause these partially digested protein fragments. In some people can cross into the bloodstream and irritate the immune system, aggravate the immune system, cause inflammation. And it's complicated.
Raw milk better or?
Might be better, but it's still milk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not a fan of it?
I'm not a fan.
Okay, so what are we going to eat then? Just an average day?
Yeah, so the core of the diet should be animal foods, so meat, seafood, poultry, eggs, your choice.
Okay, then, I sleep.
Yes.
I wake.
Uh-huh.
And then I eat a beefsteak?
Yeah, you can do that. You can eat a beefsteak, you can have an omelet, you can have a piece of chicken, you can have a piece of duck, you can have a piece of fish, salmon, anything you want.
But that's for a lot of people very confusing. For the first meal, have salmon.
I know. But this is actually much healthier than having cereal or bread, orange juice, even these sweet yogurts, much healthier than all of those choices because it gives you nutrients, it's very satisfying, and it's very, very safe for your metabolism. It does not raise your blood sugar, and it does not give you an unhealthy insulin spike. This is wonderful and satisfying. You can add some vegetables too, some low carbohydrate vegetables, some green vegetables if you like.
Like what?
But you don't have to.
No? Okay, but which one it's allowed?
Yeah. So you can have, for example, if you want to have, some cucumbers or some lettuce or even some cooked spinach, some zucchini, some very well cooked, very thoroughly cooked broccoli or cauliflower, not too much. So
really on the side, a bit.
Yes, not too much.
Okay, but you also know a lot about talking and how our brain works. So how can you learn us that we make this switch?
Oh yeah, so I think it's very, very important. If you're eating a kind of a normal diet right now with lots of carbohydrate in it, lots of flour and sugar and juice and cereal in it, it's really important to gradually reduce the carbohydrate, because if you reduce it all at once, especially if you have any health problems or you're taking any medications, your blood sugar and your insulin levels can drop very quickly, and that can be very uncomfortable. And if you're taking certain medicines, it can even be dangerous. You don't want to shock your body. You want to gradually lower over a couple of weeks. So, I usually say there's two ways you can do this. You can start with a so-called paleo diet first, which has no grains, no beans, no processed foods, just fruits and vegetables, plenty of carbohydrate, but from fruits and vegetables. And you can do this paleo diet first for a couple of weeks and then gradually reduce the fruit and starchy vegetables. Or you can do one very low carbohydrate meal per day for a week, and then 2 for the next week, and then for the third week you can have 3 low carbohydrate meals per day. So you gradually change, and that's much more comfortable, much safer
than the shock one.
Than the shock, yes.
And you do this with your patients?
Yes.
And the results are?
Really, I have never found any other approach that works as well as this. In 20 years of practicing psychiatry, yes. I mean, medicines are very helpful. They can be really helpful. They can be very important, especially certain types of mental health problems or emergency situations. Medicines can be really important. But the food is also very important. So one of the things I like to say is, medicines can change brain chemistry, but the most powerful way to change your brain chemistry is with food, because that's where the brain chemicals come from in the first place. So even if you are taking medicines, changing the diet is still very important, and it may allow you to use less medication or even no medication at all. So a lot of the people that I have seen in my practice, they either don't need to start medicine in the first place, they can avoid needing the medicine, or they can reduce the number of medications they're taking, or the amount, the dosage of the medications they're taking. In most cases, we see response. We see most people improve to some extent. And I think it's really fundamental. I think if you have a choice, this will be the first thing to do before you try medicine, unless you're in an emergency situation.
Yeah, and the social aspect, I think that's what you also see by your patient or not. That they say, then I order a steak in the morning, and my husband wants the cereals, or the children.
Yes, and so it's really nice, when possible, to have the whole family learn about nutrition. So because the ideas that we're using are really healthy for everybody. So it's nice if the whole family can practice a new way of eating, even if they don't. Let's say the husband and the daughter have a healthier metabolism. Let's say they're in very good health, and they don't have any problem with carbohydrates. It's still useful for them to know which carbohydrates are safer, and which foods are the most nutritious, and which foods are the least likely to damage their body and brain over time. So to protect them for the future, it's still good for them to know. But what if the rest of the family says, no, I think this is a terrible idea, or I really don't want to change my diet? And this happens all the time, where only one person is really motivated, and because they have a health issue that they're trying to address. So if only one person in the family is motivated, this is more challenging, requires more support, more education. And sometimes what we'll say is, can we at least talk to the family to see, can they have those foods that are most tempting to you? Can they put those somewhere else? Can they only eat them outside the house? Can they lock them somewhere or put them in a special spot? Or are they supportive of you, or are they going to be? This is a very common issue. If they think the diet is unhealthy, then it's really hard, because not only do you have to avoid the temptation, but every day you are fighting with your family about, what is healthiest. So it is much more. We eat socially. We are connected. Food connects us. Yeah. And people want to eat together. So when I'm working with individuals who have a family which is, has different ideas about nutrition, or they really don't want to change their diet, that's the hardest piece. Those people need a lot more support.
Yeah, and I think what is nice, if people are interested in when they hear you, so you can call it a carnivore diet, you can call it a lion diet. There are more approaches, but there are a lot of podcasts, what you can find on YouTube, yes. On Spotify, and I think if people are really interested, then there is a whole community out there. I saw you by Zero Carb. No, what's
Zero Carb Life was.
Yeah, Zero Carb Life. Yeah. This was a lovely lady.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah, she was obese, and she then for 3 years she only eats hamburgers, but without the bread.
Incredible, right? Just incredible. Yeah.
She improves her health so much. So it's such a strange story that you think, only eat hamburgers?
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It sounds strange, but I really would encourage people. I mean, there are different. Not everybody needs to go to a carnivore diet, but it's absolutely worth considering, especially if you've tried a keto, sort of a whole foods ketogenic diet already, and it hasn't helped you enough. Or you've tried a paleo diet already, and it hasn't helped you enough. Or, you have either mental health or physical health problems that are not fully responding to those other approaches. So there's this book that I'm writing that's coming out in January where I'm suggesting 3 different, because some people have no interest in doing a carnivore diet. Some people have no interest in doing a ketogenic diet. And I want people to know you have choices, that you don't have to.
It's too strict. If it feels too strict.
For some people, it's too strict.
Yeah.
I still think you probably get most people will get a better result going a little bit further, but there's so much you can do compared to the diet that most people are eating now. There are so many improvements that you can make even without doing a ketogenic or carnivore diet. But I also want people to know carnivore diet is really interesting and really powerful, especially if you have lots of food sensitivities and you're not really sure what they are, and you're trying to figure it out. It's a nice, clean starting place, and then you can expand from there if you want. Yeah.
And then the last topic, I don't know if it's your topic, but I find it so interesting also, sleep. Because it's also, I think, your area or not.
Well, sleep is, the brain needs to sleep.
Yeah.
And the many, many reasons it needs to sleep. But one of the reasons it needs to sleep is that's when the brain washes itself and cleans itself.
It's really like a sponge, isn't it?
It really is. There's a circulation, there's a fluid that's circulating. The brain sits in a bath that's of circulating fluid. And the fluid nourishes the brain, but it also removes the waste products from the brain. And it's most active, that washing cycle is most active at night, when you're sleeping, during your REM sleep. So sleep is very important, and people always say, oh, you have to get good sleep, you must prioritize your sleep. Well, we all know that, but how do you do that?
Yes. Yes.
What if you don't sleep well? So there are many things you can do. Some of these things have to do with exercise, some of these things have to do with light and being outside and fresh air and sunlight, and reducing stress. But one of the very important things to do is to fix your diet. Because what happens if you're eating in this way, this unstable way, glucose and insulin going up and down all day and into the evening, is the brain chemistry becomes unstable, but also your stress hormones become unstable.
Cortisol.
And your sleep hormones become unstable. So your melatonin levels are different, your cortisol levels are going up and down, your adrenaline levels are going up and down. All of these other hormones are paying attention to insulin. So when your insulin is unstable, all of these other hormones go with. So if you change your diet, most of my patients sleep much better just by changing their diet, just by taking all of these junky carbohydrates out of their diet and getting the glucose and insulin levels to stable. Yeah.
Georgia, thank you so much. I learned so much this hour.
I don't know if you had that much to learn. I think you already knew a lot.
But I learned, I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you, Marlies.
Beste kijker, als je dit filmpje ziet, houd je kennelijk van de lange en verdiepende gesprekken van de nieuwe wereld. Wil je meer van onze video's zien? Klik dan op de afbeelding hier links. Of beter nog, abonneer je op ons kanaal. Je kunt ons natuurlijk ook steunen en daar zijn wij zeer op aangewezen. Klik dan op de afbeelding rechtsboven in beeld of ga naar de beschrijving hieronder voor meer informatie. Ik dank jullie bij voorbaat van harte.